Oh, wow. So that's where he grew up, huh? Hmm. Oh, hey, landlords suck, right? It's a position of bureaucracy that's existed for centuries, with origins in the medieval era. But one such man, the Burgess of Alden, used his power and privilege to make a haven for those of society would deem othering in his time. The son of a soldier of the Eighth Crusade, a traveling bard, and a champion to his people, Mathias Riddell. So let's start with his early life. When Matthias was 5, his father joined the Eighth Crusade under Louis IX of France. I won't get into the details of that campaign here, as it was really short-lived. The TLDR is that Louis died of dysentery shortly after coming to Tanzania, and the army retreated after signing a truce. Inevitably, this led to a bunch of disenfranchised crusaders who signed up for battle and glory under the banner of God. It led Matthias' father to a crisis of faith, a mental breakdown, alcoholism, and abuse. Because of this, Matthias developed a strong distaste for war, but in order to escape from his father's oppressive household, he took a squireship in Edinburgh where he first met Patrick Smith. Though Patrick he likened to an older brother at the time, the man was a struggling blacksmith, but soon saw an increase of business when Matthias took to playing his fiddle outside of the forge in order to pay for his room and board. But there was another who saw beauty in Matthias' song and wanted him to play with exclusivity. This was a knight and a noble, Sir John, a hero of the Scottish Revolution. Matthias was awestruck by Sir John's approach, and his debts were paid by the noble, which, with the boost of Patrick's sales, had brought the Smith some great success. He spent several years living in Sir John's home, occupying the same societal stature as Marjorie, the man's wife. Hold it. Now before we go any further, I feel like I need to explain something. Due to many historical records, we know that homosexual relationships existed all throughout history, and in some cases this would actually apply to bards as well. The minstrels who came under the employ of Scottish and Irish nobles in the late medieval and early modern period. There's no reason to deny it happened earlier than that, but wasn't well recorded. In fact, Gerard L. Lyne of the Irish Times writes, "It may come as a surprise to learn that in the late medieval, early modern Ireland, a cult of male homosexuality and bisexuality was apparently not only prevalent, but widely tolerated among the upper echelons of Gaelic society, particularly in the literati, but including also native kings and chieftains. Evidence of such tolerance is to be found especially in Gaelic Irish poetry of medieval and early modern date. However, scholars seem, for whatever reason, to either ignore, play down, or deny this. Wow, I wonder why. We are cautioned by Professor Padraig Brednock that the guise of spouse could be adopted by a poet towards several patrons at once. Okay, well that just sounds like polyamory if you ask me. The poet's full assumption of a feminine role, he says, occurs within terms of an established literary conceit, and we must be wary of drawing hasty conclusions as to his psychology. Alright, well, I don't think anyone is saying that bards were transgender, though obviously living a life where one assumes a full feminine role would probably have been appealing to medieval trans women. And a parallel study by Professor Catherine Sims draws attention to the contemporary traditional role of the poet as in some sense his patron's spouse or lover. However, the bard has no intention of implying a homosexual relationship with his patron. Bed sharing was a general mark of esteem and trust in this society, strangely appropriate between a king and his poet. All right, so this reminds me of the "and they were roommates" trope. But no, seriously, that's fine. Not all bards were homosexual or transgender, but some very well may have been, like Matthias. In any case, until around his 20th year, Matthias accompanied Sir John wherever he would go throughout the British Isles, playing song and dancing for the company, and comforting his lord in the evening. Along the way, Matthias also learned swordplay using his father's weapon, an heirloom that had been passed down through the Riddell family since at least his grandfather's time. He was the first he knew of to discover the secret power inlaid in the sword, however. Through Sir John's tutelage, he was even able to access this magic in times of extreme crisis. Eventually, these travels would take Matthias and Sir John to Galway, Ireland, wherein the bard felt his heart soar higher than it ever had before. It was then that he met the sprightly Cassandra O'Hara. Matthias was impressed with the girl's knowledge of fairies, Tuatha, and the old gods. He found that the grim tales fit so well with his song that he wanted her to come with him as well. Cassandra, secretly, was delighted. With the shift in patronage of her Gaelic clan, many were finally turning to Catholicism, which meant her way of life was quickly becoming taboo. But Sir John? He feared for the safety of a young woman in his company, so out of a kindness to his fair bard, he presented the man with a freedom casket. This would be when someone of note was made a burgess, such as the Lord Provost of Edinburgh. The burgess ticket would have been presented in a box known as the freedom casket, and these were often silver or gold and lavishly decorated, bearing an engraving of the recipient's name. Okay, and now I hear you saying or typing in the comments, but what is a burgess ticket? Okay, so burgess tickets from the late medieval era were issued by the Lord Dean of Guild, an ancient office from the city of Edinburgh. Burgesses qualified for admission by fulfilling the requirements to have residence in the town, being nominated by either an incorporated trade or the merchant company, or to be related by birth or marriage, to an existing burgess, and pay the required fees. After burgessship was granted, their name would be entered in the roll, and they would consequently receive their burgess tickets. This gave Matthias a substantial helping of societal power, as only burgesses could enjoy the privileges of trading or practicing a craft in the city through belonging to a guild, or were able to own companies trading in their guild's services. As a bard, it meant he could manage his own services and music without having to report directly to a patron. Though the burgesses' ancient exclusive trading rights through their guilds were abolished in 1846, thereafter a burgess became a title which gave social standing to the office and usually carried with it a role which involved charitable activities of their guild or livery company, as it does today. See? We told you Alden was ahead of its time. But perhaps you're also wondering, now why did Matthias introduce himself to Timothy as law enforcement? In many cultures, like Switzerland, if a burgess was assassinated, the other burgesses even had the right to bring the supposed murderer to trial by judicial combat. Now, Matthias generally only has to use the implication of such fights in order to settle many of these disputes. burgesses also held a lot of power and money in the communities where they stayed. In fact, the original version of the well-known English folk song Greensleeves includes the following, and please forgive my awful lyricism. Thy purse and eke thy gay gilt knives, thy pin case gallant to the eye. No better wore the burgess wives, and yet thou wouldst not love me. This clearly implies, at the time when it was composed, being the late 16th and early 17th century, and still well within the burgess's exclusive trading rights. And a burgess was proverbial as being able to provide his wife with beautiful and expensive clothes. With the founding of Alden, Matthias' time was consumed with his wife and his new twin sons. That is, until he heard news of Sir John being slain in battle. From then on, Matthias grieved his lord and vowed he could never love another man as he did him. Even so, being a father, a husband, and the overseer of a budding village of acceptance and peace, became the ideal he lived by, freedom from all tyranny, and a positive role model that his own father couldn't be. So you may have noticed I tried changing up some of the colors between Matthias and Martin's outfits here. I wanted them to stand apart and not look so much like just a young and old copy of each other. Matthias wears red to commemorate his time in battle. Being a wind element, he displays this with his pale undershirt that peeks from under the tunic. Martin is more of a rich red to resemble the fire element from which he gets strength. And this background shows the Riddell home and the field in which Cassandra wrangles sheep. It's the largest house in the village and befitting of their leader. This would have also been the first home built in Alden and served as the community home for the first several years while other homes were being constructed. In fact, often the Riddell family will still open their home for community festivals or even intense storms that hit the Highland region. For Matthias, being a burgess or a landlord isn't about just counting his gold. It's about community and shared interest. Honestly, it sounds like a fascinating place to stay, and I wish more places like this existed in today's era. Well, this is my longest video yet. I'm glad everyone could get to the end with me. It's such a sad story. I hope you'll consider liking, subscribing, and ringing my bell. Let me know you enjoyed this content. I'll leave commenting on for this video as long as it remains civil. As I know, LGBTQ plus discussion can be pretty heated, but just like Alden, we aim to be on the right side of history when it comes to equality. In the meantime, take some time to look at our Patreon, by the way. We've been getting some attention there lately, so let me read off some names. On our Keeper tier, Lundair Lumen. Our non-combatant tier, Jace Morland, Arya Gamari, and Charles Tam. In the Observer tier, we have Shadow Fox. Thank you guys for your continued support, and we hope to see more of you over there later. For now, I'll sign off and get ready for the next project next week. This week's artist is someone really enjoy, Faha'ami. Now, I'm going to put a link to their business in the description. Please check them out. They really do quality work.